don't be greedy selling right now. Do not, if you're trying to sell. But if you're just trying to, like, you're thinking maybe I want to sell, I don't want to sell, hang on to your house. But if you want to buy, you may want to wait 18 more months.
And isn't it crazy? And we talked about this all the time. Like, everybody's talking about the market's coming, the market's going to crash. Have you ever thought that you'd actually say the words like, oh my God, like people ask me, Vinny, you're going to live here forever. Are you going to buy a house? I'm just like, just waiting for that market to crash. Yeah. Like, I never thought I'd say some shit like that. Like, the only person I knew when the crash happened was Michael Burry, right? He was the only one spinning. Now everybody's like, come on, man, let's have everything crash so I can buy a fucking house.
I'm gonna jump in, and what two things. Number one, I'm shocked. You see how, like, all the way to the right, basically when COVID hit, April of 20, that's where a little red starts showing up.
Yeah.
You would think it'd be more than that with the fury of buying that's been going on. It's clearly. If I'm looking at this, the only time it was actually good to buy was after the financial crisis. That's what I'm looking at.
Of course.
I see blue wave like it's a liberal city out over here. And then it's good to buy during the crisis. Here's my point. I say this all the time. All the time, okay? Owning a house and buying a house and taking out a mortgage and taking on debt ain't all that it's cracked up to be. The Realtor Association of the world has done a great job of saying, renting is throwing away money. Renting is throwing away money. What they will not tell you. And my mom,
by the way. My mom
exactly,
says that.
because that's what the American dream was 50 years ago. Yeah. Buy a house, 2-car garage, picket fence, 2.2 kids. That's what the American dream is. The American dream today is economic freedom. Pick and choose wherever the hell you want to go. Keep it moving and stay flexible and keep your overhead low. So what people forget is that, all right, you know that if you're going to buy a place, first thing you're going to look at is the mortgage payment, right? So typically, I mean, the last 6 months, it's gone from 3% to 6%. That's double. I'm not a mathematician, but I'm pretty sure 3 to 6 is double. Good. But the three things that people forget about when they go to buy a house, and for those of us that have bought a house, they get it now. Those of us that have not is what I call the big three expenses. That's your taxes, your maintenance, and your insurance. Those are three things you do not have to pay for if you're renting.
Exactly.
So everyone's like, well, it's cheaper to buy, or it's the same price. It's like, yeah, go ahead and figure out what your maintenance is going to be, what your taxes are going to be, and what your insurance is going to cost. Oh, you just moved to Florida. You ever heard of a fucking hurricane, buddy? Yeah. You're going to need some hurricane insurance. Yeah. So there's a difference between an investment and a lifestyle choice.
Yeah.
Buying a house isn't exactly the best investment. It might be the best lifestyle choice, but there is a difference. You can look at the math. If you put your money in the S&P 500 index fund over 10 years versus buying a house, the S&P is going to double what you're going to get for your house.
Got you.
Yeah, there's also headaches and small costs that, like, you think of it you're talking about big costs. But I've never owned a home. I lived in New York City, so I always rented. It just didn't make sense for me. And there's little things that come up. The dishwasher breaks, the washer dryer. Somebody comes in, you rent, somebody comes in, rolls in and replaces that.
Yep.
That's not your headache. That's not your time. That's not your money. So if you add up all that stuff, it winds up being a much bigger picture of what the costs and expenses are to actually own a home. I will say that the owning versus renting for me was always like a mindfuck, because I always grew up feeling like if you own something, it's yours. You have it at the end of the day.
You can touch it. I don't like stocks because I can touch my house.
And if they take everything else away from you, you have your home. But
shout out to the realtors.
And the realtors and my mom. Hi, Solange, by the way.
Solange.
But that's a feeling. That's a feeling that some of us had growing up. And it's the same for a car. I know my parents were always like, own your car, because if you lease it, never owned a car, always, lease a car. But that's just a mental game sometimes. You have to play mental gymnastics.
And a car's only worth $40,000. We're talking about a place that's worth $1 million.
Yeah.
You know who I got to give a shout out to?
Or more in certain cities.
PBD. Because anytime I have this argument, I'm like, pull up that remember that article you wrote for the Denver Post back in whatever year, 2004? Pat had, I don't know, $500,000, $1 million in the bank. You just started to do really well. And you had to make an economic decision. Do I buy a place or take all my money and invest it in the business? What'd you do?
No, I put in the business. But my idea was nothing gives me high rate of return than putting money into the business.
Bingo.
Nothing does. I mean, that's just till today. Anything, if I have access to capital, I'm putting that into the business. I'm not putting that into a house. Now, it's also different when you have 8 people living in your house. It's also different when you're positioning on where your kids are going to school. It's also different where You want to paint the house in a certain way. You don't need to get somebody's permission when you have all of that. So life would be slightly different for you if you had a wife and two kids.
But
today.
this is exactly what I'm saying. But it's lifestyle choices.
No question about it.
You have four kids. You have your father living with you. You've got Melva. Like
you're right.
Like you have to buy.
Absolutely.
But if you were just you and Jen and one kid, you would maybe even still consider.
Listen, if I'm running a business today, if I'm a business owner today, and I have a choice between putting $500,000 into a house and putting $500,000 into my business, the business is going to give you 10 times, if you're a good operator, 10 times more return on the money than real estate is.
Yep.
So if you're in the inception phase of building a business and you want to use your resources to grow your business, you're wasting your money putting into a house.
But a realtor will never tell you.
He'll never tell you that. But by the way, can you go back to that chart? And Jorge, Eric, can we increase the mic by like 5 or 10% because I can't hear myself? So if you go back to this chart, so you know the concept of a slingshot? What's the concept of a slingshot?
You pull it back and then boom, it goes 10 times
But the
further.
further you pull it back, what happens? The further it goes, right?
Yeah.
Guys, look how much higher that is than it was at the peak in 07.
I love what you're making.
Do
right
you
now,
know
this
what?
analogy.
Do you know what that means? That means the red that you see there, that red is going to be much lower. Listen, all I'm saying is and look how quickly the spike is in the last 2. Do you see the spike, like how fast it went up?
Boom.
It didn't go up that fast if you look at the one on the left. The spike on the right only took. Look at that.
That's fast.
The spike on the left. Oh my God, that's scary right there. Because if we go purely on the slingshot metaphor, real estate in about 3-5 years, man, it may be like it may be a
stack cash and get ready to buy your dream home in the next few years. Don't rush. I don't know if Rob Gargiulo's listening, but that guy didn't take my fucking advice.
In some markets, it's about to be a massive dip. If this continues the way it is.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.